I still remember the first time I walked into that sun-soaked house up in Laurel Heights, California. White stucco walls, glass everywhere, a yard the size of a football field, and three little kids screaming like the world was ending. Nobody wanted that job. 16 nannies had quit in 2 years. 17 walked out the very morning I arrived, dragging her suitcase across the marble floor, tears streaking her face, muttering "never again" under her breath. Folks in the neighborhood whispered about those triplets like they were cursed. Me, I'd raised 5 nephews on a shoestring back in Atlanta. After a childhood of scrubbing floors and dodging slurs, a tantrum didn't scare me. It just sounded like pain waiting to be heard. They called them the Whitlock triplets, but to me they were just kids. Miles, Jonah, and little Rose. 4 years old, hair like spun gold, eyes too wide, always searching for their mama who'd died too soon. Their grandma, Eleanor Whitlock, sat upstairs dripping diamonds and judgment, convinced money could solve anything except apparently her grandkids. Their dad, Daniel, tried, but he was drowning in grief and business deals. And then there was me, Clarice Monroe, the cook they barely noticed when I showed up 3 months earlier. That first day, the kids were in full meltdown. Rose kicked over a vase, Jonah climbed the curtains like Spider-Man, and Miles sobbed into a ragged teddy bear. I dried my hands on my apron and walked straight into the living room. "Hey," I said softly, "you're making so much noise, even the birds outside are scared." 3 sets of eyes turned. "Who are you?" Jonah asked, still dangling from the drapes. "I'm the one who makes your favorite chicken nuggets," I told him. "And right now I need help saving lunch before it burns. No lectures, no threats, just a job, a purpose." Rose blinked first, then hopped off the sofa. Within minutes, all 3 were in the kitchen. Miles stirring sauce with a spoon, bigger than his arm. Jonah washing tomatoes. Rose lining up spices like rainbows. For the first time in months, that house went quiet in the best possible way. Upstairs, Eleanor saw the whole thing from the landing pearls clutched at her throat. Her eyes narrowed. A cook shouldn't have that kind of influence, not over children bred for private schools and country clubs. She made her decision that afternoon, hire a real professional, and put the maid back in her place. But what she didn't know was that I'd been underestimated my whole life, and every underestimation was like a deposit in my savings account of patience. The next day, she brought in Christine Mallory, a slim British woman with a resume thicker than a Bible. Christine spoke about structural discipline and formative obedience, words Eleanor lapped up like champagne. The triplets went from giggles and sauce splashes to sitting silent at little desks, coloring inside predetermined lines. "Good," Eleanor whispered from the hallway, "proper children at last." But I watched their light dim like someone had flipped a switch. Jonah stopped humming. Rose wouldn't meet my eyes. Miles's teddy bear disappeared under his pillow. Then came the comments, little stabs disguised as instructions. "Maids don't understand rich children," Christine told them when she thought I wasn't listening. "Black women spoil kids. They don't raise them." One afternoon, Miles shuffled into my kitchen with a red mark on his arm. "She squeezed me 'cause I cried," he whispered. That was the moment I decided no more. I'd been a cook, a nanny, a janitor, a stand-in mama, but I'd also been a quiet strategist my whole life. In the South, you learn documentation is survival. I slid my phone into my apron and started recording. Every shout, every insult, every time Christine used those little hands as props for her power trips. And I didn't stop there. My neighbor Maggie, a retired social worker, became my sounding board. She told me about California's laws about hostile work environments and discrimination cases. "But you need them to hang themselves," she warned. "Don't rush it." So I waited. And while I waited, I planned. The opportunity came dressed up like a gala dinner. Eleanor loved showing off her mansion to the Laurel Heights Women's League. 40 of the city's most powerful women, 2 journalists, a city council member, and the head of the Child Protection Alliance were coming. Perfect stage. I baked animal-shaped cookies knowing the smell would drift upstairs. I left the kitchen door ajar on purpose. Just before dessert, the triplets came tumbling down the stairs, calling Aunt Clarice like they always did. Christine's face went crimson. "Back to your room immediately," she barked, grabbing Miles by the arm. "You don't eat outside mealtimes." Her voice echoed into the dining room. Guests paused mid-sip. "It's just cookies," Rose whispered. "She's not allowed." Christine snapped. Eleanor swept in tight smile plastered on her face, but it was too late. One guest murmured, "Did she just scold a 4-year-old for wanting a cookie?" Another whispered, "That's the cook." Christine doubled down, her accent sharpening. Children from distinguished families must learn strict boundaries. The contempt rolled off her tongue. I stayed quiet, phone recording heart steady. Give a prejudiced person enough rope. 2 nights later came the main event, the annual charity banquet. Eleanor in full peacock mode, Christine bragging about European training. I'd rehearsed with the triplets in secret, teaching them to stand tall, to speak plain. When the moment came, Miles accidentally dropped a bowl of herbs at Christine's feet. She spun on him, gripping his arm hard. "How many times do I have to tell you?" she hissed. 40 women watched. Rose looked up, voice trembling but clear. "Why do you always say black people can't teach rich kids?" Silence fell like a curtain. Jonah added, "You said Aunt Clarice spoiled us because she's a black maid." Gasps. Cell phones rose like a forest. Christine's jaw opened and shut. Eleanor tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "That's a terrible misunderstanding. But kids don't lie with that much detail." I stepped forward, calm as a preacher on Sunday morning. "Ladies," I said, "would you like to see what's been happening in this house?" I tapped my phone. The giant TV lit up with videos. Christine yanking a small arm. Eleanor whispering about keeping the maid in her place. Casual slurs slipped between lessons. You could hear forks clatter onto china. The head of the Child Protection Alliance scribbled notes like fire. One journalist live-streamed the whole thing. Christine went white as linen. Eleanor reached for the remote, but someone else grabbed it first. All that power they thought they had melting like sugar in hot tea. After that night, everything flipped. The papers called it the Laurel Heights scandal. Christine lost her visa and fled back to London. Eleanor was kicked out of her clubs, her name stripped off charity boards. Daniel kept his distance at first, but then walked into my kitchen, eyes glassy, saying, "Clarice, I should have protected you and the kids. I'm sorry." He offered to pay for my early childhood education degree. I took it, but I also opened a community school downtown, a place where kids who looked like me and kids who didn't could learn with dignity. Miles, Jonah, and Rose became my first students. They're older now, empathetic, bright, and proud of where they came from. And Eleanor Court ordered her to do community service. She ladles soup every Tuesday at my school, her pearls replaced by a plain apron. Sometimes she won't look me in the eye. Sometimes she does, and there's a flicker of respect there. Life has a funny way of teaching humility. Daniel and I, we built something like a family, but not the kind they write in society pages. One built on trust, on evenings spent reading stories, instead of enforcing punishments, on long talks about the past we survived. We didn't rush into marriage. When it finally happened years later, he stood up at the reception and said, "Clarice taught me that family isn't about bloodlines or bank accounts. It's about love showing up day after day." Folks cried. I smiled, thinking about that first day in the kitchen, about sauce splattering and 3 scared kids finding safety in a stranger's voice. I tell this story not because I want applause, but because I want folks to understand being underestimated can be your greatest training ground. All those years of people calling me just a cook gave me stealth patience and the ability to strike when the moment mattered. Christine and Eleanor thought they were running the show. Turns out I was directing the whole play from the wings. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you have documented everything quietly or blown the whistle sooner? Have you ever seen someone flip the script on prejudice the way we did in that house? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your stories. Because the more we share how we faced injustice with intelligence, not just anger, the stronger we all get. And if this story touched you, hit subscribe, because we've got more real stories about grit, heart, and unexpected victories coming your way.